now 11 minutes to 7. It didn't take long after the names of two of the London Bridge attackers emerged for one of them, Khurram Butt, to be identified as one of the jihadis next door, featured in the Channel 4 documentary of that name last year. But the chief executive of the Muslim anti-extremism charity, the Ramadhan Foundation, remembered him from earlier. He is Mohammed Shafiq and he's in our Salford studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Michelle.
When did you come across Khurram Butt?
It was in May 2013, the day after the brutal murder of Lee Rigby. I was on College Green outside Westminster doing a round of TV interviews, and I noticed to the corner of my eye Anjem Chaudhry and a group of other men. And as I went over to, angrily confront him because I was disgusted that somebody who was a violent extremist who had glorified terrorism and the actions of ISIS was allowed on our TV screens.
Anjem Chaudhry you're referring to
Anjem Chaudhry here, yeah. And as I confronted him and got into a bit of a heated debate with him, Khurram Butt kept shouting out, "You're a murtad," which means in Arabic means you're a traitor. And obviously that term gets you killed across the Middle East, and ISIS have used that to kill fellow Muslims.
And then you saw him in this documentary last year. And did you recognise him as the same person?
Yes, I was watching the documentary with my wife and I noticed him straight away. I recognised him straight away. And certainly, he was obviously within that circle of Al-Muhajirin. Again, these are people who I know and people know in the community have glorified terrorism. A number of us, including myself, reported these to the authorities through the counter-terrorism hotline. And we know that the counter-terrorism MI5 and other agencies were aware of this.
Right, but did you report Khurram Butt in May 2013 for what he'd said to you?
Yes, I rang the counter-terrorism hotline and I relayed my concerns about not necessarily Khurram Butt, but certainly Anjem Chaudhry.
OK. So then when you saw Khurram Butt appear in that documentary last year, did you report him then?
No, I didn't know.
OK. So what does this... obviously, you're saying that the security services should have taken action, but on what basis? For what?
Well, for glorification of terrorism, for instance. We know from people who live in his neighbourhood that he was making, positive comments about suicide bombings and ISIS.
Right. Is that enough? Is that enough, in your view, to have someone locked up?
Well, you can't point the figure at the Muslim community as the Prime Minister did and said we're Muslims are too tolerant of extremism, when actually it's the society and it's the agencies that are there to protect us from these terrorists are allowing these terrorists to roam our streets. They're out there. They've been outside mosques. They've been outside Edgware Road and other parts of the country.
Right, but I'm just wondering, hurling abuse. So would you be happy to see Muslims locked up on the basis of making those kinds of statements?
If you glorify terrorism, if you glorify the barbaric crimes which ISIS have been involved in, then the law should take its course and you should be held accountable.
So that means you are calling for new laws then, aren't you, actually? Because in the end, when Anjem Chaudhry was convicted, in the end it was for inviting support for a proscribed organisation, in that case Islamic State, prescribed under the Terrorism Act.
Anjem Chaudhry was known to the authorities for many years. He was action was never taken against him until recently. So, I think there's enough laws out there. He glorifies terrorism, as do all these.
Well, what is the definition of glorifying terrorism then?
Well, so if you stand outside a mosque, as these group of people did, a Regent's Park mosque, and shout out that ISIS is the Islamic State and every Muslim has got a duty to pledge allegiance to it, and its crimes are holy wars. There is a clash of civilization going on.
So locking people up on the basis of their words rather than their actions?
No, I think it's slightly different, Michelle. This is about a group of people who glorify and support the evil ideology of ISIS. That's different to somebody actually criticising foreign policy and other aspects. I'm somebody who's spent the last few days and a few years talking about foreign policy. That doesn't make me a terrorist. But these people glorify it and they get very happy when they see terrorist atrocities happening around the world. And we've got to take them on.
Mohammed Shafiq of the Ramadhan Foundation, thank you.